right, so welcome everyone to another one of Gallery 51's featured artist talks. And today we have the great pleasure of speaking with artist Gladys Calichini. And as we always do, this is our opportunity for you to ask questions and actually talk with Gladys as she shares with us her work. And welcome, Gladys.
Hi, Erica. Thank you. My name is Gladys Calichini. I'm a visual artist from Zambia. I'm a student. I'm a PhD student at Rhodes University right now with the Arts of Africa research team. I'm working on my PhD in art history, and it's looking at the idea of invisibility. I'm trying to conceptualize invisibility as it relates to particular women freedom fighters, or specific women freedom fighters, if I should say so, within the context of Zambia and Zimbabwe, or also known, the colonial territory, also known as Northern Rhodesia and Southern Rhodesia. And to kind of like work on this work, the quote I'm kind of starting with is a quote from Ellison's Invisible Man, which quotes as follows: "I am a woman of substance." I have to mention that I changed the word woman over there, because the original quote is "I am a man of substance." But because I'm working with the ideas of women, it made sense to me to put the word woman, because this is how I kind of felt that some of the stories felt. So it's, I'm a woman of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquid, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. It is as though I have been surrounded by mirrors of hard, distorting glass. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me. My invisibility is not exactly a matter of a biochemical accident to my epidermis. That invisibility to which I refer occurs because of a peculiar disposition of the eyes of those with whom I come into contact, a matter of the construction of their inner eyes, those eyes with which they look through their physical eyes upon reality. To be seen, being bumped against, poor vision, often doubt if you really exist. The need to convince yourself that you do exist in the real world, that you're part of all the sound and anguish, and you strike out with your fists, you curse and you swear to make them recognize you, and alas, it's seldom successful. So overtly violent, I am invisible. So kind of like drawing from this idea, my thesis looks at conceptualizing invisibility in relation to 6 women freedom fighters in Zambia and Zimbabwe, and kind of argues that they are invisible within the bigger picture or the dominant narrative of independence. And the thesis kind of like, the thesis looks into arguing this and making some of the stories visible. I must admit that I'm not trying to make them new heroes, but what I'm really trying to do is complicate a history and make it more complex than the dominant singular narrative. I'm just really trying to make it multiple perspective, and I'm trying to add the perspectives I feel is important, or the kind of voices that I feel are silent or have been shadowed or have been made invisible.
Well, I think that all of us, after listening to that, are really excited about seeing some of the images of your work. And just so that everybody knows, as we continue the conversation, as I said, that this is a conversation. So if you have a question for Gladys, please make sure that you share that with us in the chat, and then either Veronica will ask you and unmute you if you'd like to ask the question yourself, or Veronica or myself can ask the question for you. But I think that at this point, there's lots of information about you. I think we can go into a lot of amazing accolades about your work, but all of that is on our site, and we wanted to devote the 60 minutes to just talking with you and learning about you. So let's just get started with that.
Okay, so for my PhD thesis, I'm really working on this idea of invisibility, like I said, in relation to particular women. And so I started off with a quote from Ellison, which is on your screen right now. And it says, I'm a woman of substance, but the original word says is I'm a man of substance, of flesh and bone, fiber and liquids, and I might even be said to possess a mind. I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. It is as though I have been surrounded by mirrors of hard, distorting glass. When they approach me, they see only my surroundings themselves or figments of their imagination. Indeed, everything and anything except me. My invisibility is not exactly a matter of biochemical accident to my epidermis. That invisibility to which I refer occurs because of a peculiar disposition of the eyes of those with whom I come into contact. A matter of the construction of their inner eyes, those eyes with which they look through their physical eyes upon reality. To be unseen, being bumped against, poor vision, often doubt if you really exist. They need to convince yourself that you do exist in the real world, that you're a part of all the sound and anguish, and you strike out with your fists. You curse and you swear to make them recognize you, and alas, it's seldom successful. So overtly violent, I am invisible. So kind of like building from this thing and looking at particular stories of women, I was looking at the way in which their stories have become invisible, or that they are not seen in particular spaces, most particularly the archives as a place of memory, kind of like what Nora defines it as a place in which memory can secrete itself. But I wouldn't see these things, or in monuments, and then kind of like building this idea and seeing how it kind of like slips through into contemporary art. This is kind of like what I'm writing on about. And then so I collected a bunch of archival images, which are both my reference work for my PhD thesis and for my current exhibition. So I don't know if that's kind of like somehow puts it
yes.
in a way that people can understand.
So I know that you've created a bit of a slideshow for us. So for those of us that aren't familiar with your work, can you share a little bit about your practice? Or show us some images?
So that's some of the, so this is one of the photographs, like when I'm making my work. So a lot of my work that I'm building now, starting from 2014, 2015, is based on a couple of images I had found in the archives. And this is the first image that I had found in there, which is an image of Julia Chikamoneka, Emilia Saidi, and Madalena Mumba protesting in 1961 in Zambia against the British colonized constitution post-independence. So I've been looking at a lot of these images and kind of like also fascinated by the idea of death and mourning. And a lot of my work kind of builds like from these ideas of how I would maybe mourn these stories or remember them, or maybe like my sort of feelings when I'm walking through these spaces and finding this kind of images. So a lot of my work it manifests in a lot of mediums. I'm not sure which medium to point at. So I can make videos, installations, paintings, all which in some way reference what either my feelings during the time when I'm making this work or what I think is happening in the archives. So what you're looking at here is a video still of a video installation I made in 2017. And I was kind of like trying to stage a burial process in Zambia, or like a tradition where people are covered with white cloth, with white powder and stuff like this, and also working with some of the materials that are personal to myself in this thing. Yeah, so when installed, it looks like this. When you look at it on the screen, it looks like this, but when you install it, it looks like this.
Okay.
Which is just two screens, and the other screen is a voile cloth, and the other one is just like the wall. And when you project it, the image splits, and people can walk around it and things like this. So which is also the same thing. This one's voile, but it's an outdoor installation.
Mm-hmm.
The size of it is about let's see. Okay, the one piece of cloth is about like maybe 12 meters. I'm not sure what it is in feet.
Yeah, I'll have to Google that. Give me a minute.
Yeah, yeah, it's like about 12 meters per piece,
Okay.
and it had like maybe 4 panels
Okay.
of 12 meters each, 12 by 2.5, yeah, approximately. And it was stuck outside,
Okay.
and for a process of over 2 weeks, I would constantly record what is happening to the fabric. The idea with this was kind of to make like a fluid monument, because every time I go to monuments, they're always like so solid. If you see it, it's always either made in bronze or in marble or stone, and it's almost as if it's like the memory is permanent. But
Right.
in this kind of looking at images, I kind of feel like even though images themselves can be kind of like monuments, that they're not permanent. Like they can be fluid and they can change, and even history in itself kind of changes over time. So this is kind of like my thoughts around this installation and recording it over a period of time, which is also kind of like the same idea with this work over here. This one started with a bunch of paintings that I had covered up, and then over time I would document the movement of the fabric as it moved. On some days, like it moved in ways where it was actually really stunning, I thought, to look at. On other days, not so much. And then I usually end up with like a whole bunch of images because it's so many images over a long period of time. And then I kind of compress those and then turn them into artwork, either in video form or in a photographic form, or repaint it in some way, depending on how I'm feeling that day. Yeah, so this is the same installation as this one. When I installed it in the gallery, I had put candles on there, but this one was kind of like hard because every morning you have to go light up the candles and then switch them off later and things like this. Yeah, but it was in connection to that one. When I did set it up, I tried to set it up in a way that I would make kind of like a memorial place, mimicking when there's a funeral. You go to the church and you see the body, and there's almost like a place where people pay respect to the body. So that's kind of like what I was trying to mimic with this installation. Same thing as this one. It's the cloth, the documenting of the cloth again. This one as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get. And sorry. These images now are from the newer work, from the ones that are going into the upcoming exhibition. So in this one, again, it's still very much the continuation of this idea that I'm interested in, the idea of women freedom fighters, the idea of mourning, the idea of monuments, ideas of commemorating and memory, and just generally putting that together and kind of like looking and saying, okay, this is how far I've come in my research, and this is what I think at this point, and this is how much information I've come to find, and this is some of the fabrics I've come into contact with now that I kind of feel like are relevant to my work, or they're symbolic in some way in their nature, in themselves. Like, for example, what you're looking at right now is bark cloth, which I got from Uganda from a friend called Claire. And this cloth is said to be disappearing, or to have been reducing in production ever since the introduction of Arab cloth or something like this. So kind of like it's dying away, or the use of it is dying away. So in that way, I feel like the fabric in itself had meaning, that can do this thing. And then she also told me that sometimes it can be used to wrap dead bodies, and which with my kind of work, it's it's almost like, okay, it kind of makes sense to use it. So this is in the new exhibition, and in the new exhibition it's installed loosely, so it's not painted on or anything, and we're trying to put it up on flagpoles to kind of also mimic when there's national mourning, you know, like you put your flags at half. Yeah. So
Right.
this is what we're trying to mimic with that. And this one is the second installation in the upcoming exhibition, and it's titled "These Wreaths Are Laid in Honor of Her Memories." And it's meant to be, it's going to be a little bit hard to explain this one because we're installing it right now.
Okay.
As we're talking.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's roses made of crepe paper, each one of them one by one, handmade. Because also I feel like when making this work, I was also kind of like trying to go the idea of commodification and trying to see what it really means to spend time when making the work, or when people are mourning. Because like when people mourn, they mourn over a given period of time. So it could be like a short time or a long time, or it's something they think about for over a very long period of time, and they do different things when they are mourning. Some people talk to friends, some people sit by themselves, some people collect objects from the deceased, or some people find something to do that really seems like a menial something or like repetition, but as a way of coping. So kind of like also borrowing from that idea, I decided to make about, I don't know how many they are. I think like at this point we have about 300 maybe. So each one of them is made one by one by one by one by one by cutting pieces of paper. And we're going to try to install it on swings. So again, to kind of make a monument, but a much more fluid monument. And like the paper in itself, it's fragile. So again, it's talking about the fragility of memory, that it's fleeting, that it can be deleted sometimes it can't be deleted, it can move and it can morph. And then sometimes we want to take very good care of like the memories we hold on to in that way. That's the second installation. And then the third installation is a video installation again. I seem to like the video installations, but yeah. So it's a 4-channel video, or it's 4 videos, or it's 1 video on 4 screens. And in this work looks more at the idea of cleansing and mourning collectively, or taking care during the mourning thing. I was also kind of looking at how women would tell stories of other women, also looking at myself as a woman going through these archives and looking through these stories and stuff like this, and bringing it together and just kind of like making it. And a very interesting thing about this work is that I produced it now during lockdown. Initially, the way I had designed it was very different, but then the airports are closed and there's COVID-19, you can't go near anyone and it's very difficult. So I asked some of my friends to help me film this. So all 3 of them is my friends. There's Claire at the very end there on the left, and Pamela in the middle, and Batanda on the end. And I'm shooting with Eric and Alex and Noah at some point. And then Peter and Arthur are installing it right now. But it's coming out together. But I also kind of feel like, given the way in which this particular installation has been produced in these times when there's Corona, and the idea of sharing and collaborating with all these people, especially about a work that kind of looks at ideas of caring, or an idea of women telling stories about women, or taking time to care for certain stories. I feel like that kind of gives it an interesting dimension, that at some point it took its own, it took its own form, and it kind of unfolded in a way that it allowed for people to come in and help in the production, or kind of like help, because I think they thought I was distressed. So they were kind of, oh, let's help Gladys, let's take care, help with the work and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, this is kind of like it. So this is kind of like, I've tried to summarize a bunch of the work in there, but I hope it gives a general idea of what the work is like.
So, so first of all, you've shared these last couple of images with us. Tell us a little bit about the exhibition, where it's going to be, when it's going to be, the name of it, Give us a little bit of info.
Okay, so this exhibition is titled These Gestures of Memory, or ... These Gestures of Memory. I
Okay.
forgot the ... It's at Künstlerhaus Britannien in Berlin, Germany. It opens on the 19th of June, on Friday, this coming Friday, and it's open up until the 12th of July.
Okay. And so will there be a virtual experience then? Are we going to be able to experience it virtually for those of us that cannot see it and during this quarantine? How is that going to work?
We're actually working with both the Battalion and one of the other artists who's having a solo show almost also at the same time, called Igor Vido, the Brazilian artist. Yeah, and we are kind of like in conversation and seeing like how we can activate the exhibitions for like online platforms. So we're planning to do a couple of conversations in there and a couple of conversations of us talking about the shows. And I feel like it's really interesting because his work and my work kind of like mirror each other really well, or there's like a really good conversation going on between the two works. So please do follow us on Instagram, like, and also follow the Künstlerhaus Britannien page, because we're probably gonna throw a whole bunch of stuff on there.
Okay, well, we will share that information. You share with us what we can share, and we will make sure to get that out. I think sounds amazing. And just, there's so many different materials that you use and so many ways that you approach them. And I just wonder, I had a couple of questions for you about, particularly because the scale of the work. And so let's start with the video. Having them projected onto the walls and allowing people to walk through them. My first question is, what is your intention behind that, and is there a certain experience that you want for the visitor? And then, because we're just seeing images, is there any audio with this at all when you go through?
The new video, this video that I'll be showing has audio, but the other one I showed has no audio. It's completely silent. So maybe I talk about that one a little bit more.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to go back to where it is, if I can figure it out. Okay, there. Okay, so with this video, I feel like it has to be experienced in person, unfortunately. Like it helps to experience it. It was in an exhibition, a solo exhibition I did in 2017, titled Uncasting Shadows, or Chamoneka Uncasting Shadows. Chamoneka kind of like playing on the name of one of the women who I look at, who's Julia Chikamoneka. So it means to become seen, or to be seen, or it will be seen, or it will become visible, or one of the two. And then Uncasting Shadows was kind of like coming from my journey going through the archives and looking through the shadows and finding kind of like these women and their stories and things like this. And then when I projected the video and putting it like this, I was hoping that when people kind of like walk through the video, they kind of disrupt it. And when they disrupt it, they don't necessarily disrupt it that they become it's them and then there's the video over there, but they become part of the video, or they become part of the work. They cast the shadow in the work, literally. And depending from where they are standing, the shadow is cast differently. So if the person is standing, for example, in front of the second screen, their shadow is seen all the way through each and every single screen and each and every single projection. You will see it. But if they stand in between two screens, their shadow is only cast on one part of the screen, but is not cast on the other part of the screen. So they can only disrupt one thing. And then when they're in the middle, they're literally part of the video. And for the other person who's on the other side simultaneously, they see them because the material is really light.
Right.
So they can.
More. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry?
So this was about the participation and the actual experience of casting the shadow and where you are. So
exactly.
In comparison to the work that you're going to do for the upcoming exhibition, the audio with the video, what role does that play differently for the current work?
For the current work, the audio I'm using is some Catholic songs that I got from Zambia. I think it's like the parish is like the Eastern Province parish.
Okay.
That's where I got it from. That's
Okay.
the music I'm looking at. And again, I was looking at the idea of creating the ambience, because this time they can't really cast the shadows.
Right.
Because number one, we've put the projections in a different angle that it doesn't matter like really where you stood, that we will not see your shadow
Right.
in any way.
Right.
And some of them are on screens. So we can't see your shadow, but it creates the ambience, or it creates the mood. It kind of like informs you, and it's really quote unquote religious music, or it's music that you are playing in a place of worship. And I was also kind of really drawing a lot from the funerals I've attended, and kind of the songs I have listened to when they're there. And so now I'm trying to translate that experience and hope that it kind of like comes into the exhibition somehow. I'm not quite sure yet how it will translate, because right now we've only kind of like just really tested it, but I'm not sure yet how the audience will kind of like relate to it, especially that it's a show in Berlin. And
Right.
to understand the show, you kind of like need to understand a certain context. And yeah.
Right. And I'm sure you would plan to be there at some point. So we have a question, which I think this is very related, from Esther. And Esther, actually, shall we unmute Esther? Hi, Esther. Let's see. I think she's unmuted. Did we unmute you? There you are. Hi.
Hello. Hello. I'm Esther from Korea, and we're in the process of writing a feature about Gladys. So she told me about that, and it's like, oh, perfect. Makes sense.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I know Igor Vidor. We did do a series with him, so I'm really excited to see the show opening. Yeah. And I was wondering all the time, I was like, but she's still in South Africa. How is this gonna work? Because do you know the room before? Do you know? I mean, you know the space, but yeah. I can imagine that you maybe, when you set it up, you change your mind because you're like, oh, that work doesn't work in that corner. I need it somewhere else. How will you do it? I mean, especially if it works. It seems difficult, I think. Because, yeah, the placing is really so important.
Oh, what we're doing right now is we're doing it via video with Peter and Arthur. So it's like we have the artwork, and then they do video call, and then like, where is it? And we're like, no, can you move it 2 inches? And then 2 inches on the screen is very different to 2 inches in person. And then Peter has to call me back again, and he's like, it moved 2 inches. And I'm like, it didn't move 2 inches. It looks the same. It's very different and stuff. But like I did have an idea of the exhibition before, because my residency started in September, so it's kind of like working towards the exhibition from September. And I did have some sort of idea of what I thought I wanted to be in the space. And luckily enough is that a lot of the physical stuff was done before I traveled out of Berlin. And the digital stuff is a little bit easier to move back in. And yeah, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like,
yes, I mean, I will make a video when I'm there, and I will record everything. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you.
But just as a heads up, Esther, we are planning to switch some of the work in the middle when I do arrive. Like, we're gonna have to switch some works.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure all of this is it's so new to have to do and use these different devices and methods of installation, without being able to be there. And yeah, I think it is pretty amazing. before our talk, Gladys showed us a couple of images on her phone, and Veronica and I were like, how does that work? How big is the room? So I was the person that had to decide how it was placed. We have another question for you. Thank you, Esther. We have another question for you, Gladys, from Hannah. Hannah, can we unmute Hannah? Where's Hannah? I don't know if we see. Hello, Hannah. Hannah, would you rather we ask this question for you? I'm going to go ahead, and if Hannah says something, we'll put her on.
I'm currently trying to unmute the mic so that she's able to ask.
Okay. Hannah? Something.
So if you can ask on my behalf.
Sure, absolutely. Hannah is, let me open this a little bit. Hannah says, great work. Considering that the work centers on Zambian culture and experiences, is there an intention to show the work in Zambia? In addition, how do you, Gladys, think the different audiences will react to your work, European versus African, particularly Zambia? That was a long one, and we'll start with the first one again. How about this? Your work centers on Zambian culture and experiences. Is there an intention to the show? Is there an intention to show the work in Zambia?
I hope so. I hope I could. But then, like I said, a lot of my work it's very connected. So I've shown, for example, this video that you're looking at, the screen that you're looking at. I've shown this in Zambia before.
Okay.
Yeah, I showed it in 2018 with Loka in Livingston, which is a great collective. Please look it up. I'll try to send a link or something.
Yeah, please share it if you can. And then Hannah wants to know, do you think that the audiences will react differently, European versus African, in particular Zambian audiences, to the work?
I feel like they won't react differently because I feel like mourning is common. It's a practice that's common to everyone. Loss is something that almost everyone in the world has experienced. And I do acknowledge that, fair enough, people mourn differently, or they kind of like experience certain things or go through certain processes differently. But at the very core of it, mourning is something that's very common to all the human beings. I do think, though, that there's going to be a lot of questions of who is this woman, or who is that woman, or who's this woman, because obviously I understand that maybe they've never heard of them because it's a different context, but we are making a catalog, so please also get the catalog.
Oh, great. Okay.
With the information on it, and hopefully then I can speak a little bit more about it. Again, like I said, with Ego, like as we're talking about it, kind of like flesh out more information so that when I'm putting this work out there, so people are understanding. So it's not just that we're making these images and we're putting the work out there in a way that people don't understand the context or anything.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you, Hannah. We've got another question from Molly. Molly, I'd like to ask you a question about archiving the work. Molly? Where's Molly? There she is.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes. Hi, Molly.
Yeah. Hey. So my question is actually about the archives that you were working in to draw this, the information that you were using. You're talking about the different ways that you work with the archive. I'm just very curious. I do a lot of work with archives myself, and kind of how that process worked for you, like at what stages you used the archive, if and kind of what you were able to find, what you weren't able to find, and how that influenced the different pieces of the project.
Oh, okay. I think I live in the archives though, but sure. But like, yeah. Yeah. The archives I was really interested in, of course, is Zambian archives and Zimbabwean archives. For this particular project, I looked at the Zimbabwean archives. I went to the National Archives of Zambia, which are in Lusaka, and the UNIP archives, which is the Independence Party archives, that's in Zambia. In Zimbabwe, I went to the ZANU-PF archives, and I went to the National Archives of Zimbabwe in Harare. So, and the very funny thing is that all these 4 archives are very different from each other. When I went to the National Archives of Zambia, for example, I had to register and say, oh, I'm a researcher, and then they can show me this kind of stuff, and you can kind of go through these drawers, and you can kind of find these images. When I went to the UNIP archives, they said, oh, we boxed up everything because everything was getting ruined, and then we put it in a box. So can you come back tomorrow? And then I came back tomorrow, and they said, no, they're still in the box. And I came back again the next day, and they said, still in the box. Then I showed up again the next week, and they were like, oh, you're not going to go away. Then they showed me a couple of other stuff, and then I was like, no, what are you looking for? And then they asked me, but the good thing is that they then connected me to Chibesa Kankasa, who's one of the women I was actually looking at. So it was kind of nice that they did that. But I also feel like they did that to get rid of me. But either way, I went back afterwards still. So yeah, that is like one thing. And then when I went to the National Archives in Zimbabwe, I went there last year in January. And it was also kind of like formal. You come in and then you register and say, oh, I'm here, I'm a researcher, and then write down all your details and say, if you want to look at this, go see this, and then go see this, and go see this. And you can scan these images, you can't scan these images, you can't see this, or you can see this. But then, I mean, if they say you can't see this, I feel like then you get even more curious, like, what is it that I can't see?
Right.
Then you come back the next day. And then the ZANU-PF archives, the same thing, but I have to also kind of point out that some of the archives, especially if they're like a party archives, the archives are kind of tailored to make the party look in the best of lights, you know? So yeah, did I find a lot of information? I found a lot of random images. I'll tell you that. I found a bunch of random images, and I didn't find exactly like the specific images of the women. I found very few of those, so which then became the base of my work. So like an image where I would say that it was a very well documented image, looking at the context of Zambia and Zimbabwe would be, I would say that, okay, I found this image of Julia Chikamoneka. It clearly said Julia Chikamoneka, the year was correct and the event was correct. Those were very few. A bunch of the images were kind of just like, oh, women participating in the struggle, women performing roles and things like this. Oh, dead bodies, I think, you know, things like this. But what I do ever since I did meet Chibesa Kankasa was now kind of start tracing, you know, relatives or people who are somehow connected to these women. And the more I found those ones, some of them had interesting images and they had more information. So for the things that I couldn't find in the archives, I ended up having to ask some of the women, and then they kind of like completed the story for me. And yeah, the other question was, how do I make that into the artwork? I think immediately the one I think of is the last video, the idea of sharing or of caring. I kind of feel like in this process of going around and being able to find this thing, or like kind of going and trying to find the information somewhere else, that it becomes a very collaborative effort in kind of like making or having a clearer picture of what it is, or maybe not even just one picture, or having multiple perspectives of the same story.
Did that answer your question, Molly?
It did, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly. We have another question, and I'm not sure, is it Annie? Annie, or maybe Veronica, did someone ask another question? I'm not sure if I have the...
I haven't seen one yet, but she did say that I might have one, and I actually do.
Okay, great.
I guess I'm curious about what drew you to art in the first place, and how did you decide to connect it between the research that you're doing?
Sorry, how did I decide on that?
On going into art and then deciding to connect it with your research.
Oh, that's a loaded one. I don't know. how did I decide to go into art? I don't know. Like I feel like I wish I could answer that question in a way where I could say that, oh, I woke up this day and decided I'm an artist. Like, I rather think it's a process, because like my first degree is in economics, so yeah. But like still, while studying economics, I had a studio in the showgrounds in Lusaka where I would go, and I will admit that in the beginning it kind of started off as a place where I would go and like lay off my steam and do my stuff, but then I found that I liked the studio much more than I liked economics, so here we are now.
Yeah, it's
How
interesting cross
do I
bridge.
connect my research to my work? I feel like when I'm making my work, like I like to be quite thoughtful, or I'm kind of like just really translating what I'm finding. And I feel like it kind of helps me if I'm making work from my research, because then I'm making work from a much more informed place, you know, because I wouldn't like to make work that's just like work, like, oh, for example, you'd have like what you call bandwagonism, like, oh, this is exciting now, let's start talking about this. Like, I would hate to do that, or to make work that's a bit shallow. So I feel like if I'm researching and then I'm making my work, that's what gives it the depth, or that's kind of like the detail, or the attention to detail is very related to this idea of researching, that, okay, when I'm coming and I'm saying that I feel like this woman is absent in the archives, that I really know that she's absent, well, at least in the archive I went to, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's quite incredible to actually see how you're able to translate between the research that you do into an artwork. There's a lot of work that has to go in to deciding how that translates and what is still depicted, or what even language still goes along with the artwork itself. But it comes out beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm
Thank
glad you
you.
feel that way.
Yeah, that was a good one, Veronica. So we're hitting the about the 10-minute mark. I'm going to put it back on the grid so we can see, and Gladys can see who's joined us. I don't know if I can make it a little bit bigger. But I wanted to invite people. Oh, we have someone who has raised their hand to ask a question. Let me find you.
Hi.
Yes.
I've raised a hand because I think she sent a message privately. I'm still navigating this room. Hi, Gladys.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation, and yeah, congratulations on your solo exhibition. Upcoming exhibition. I want to ask about you inserting yourself in your work. What is the meaning in it? And especially now in relation to inviting other people to perform in your work. And then another question, just you also, I don't think you speak for these women, but they were very loud in their political, especially in Zambia. And I think the first image you showed, the archive, it also embodies that, but also archives tend to silence as well, like you said, with erasure and stuff like that. But I'm just interested in this idea of silence, you know, and mourning and grief, especially for women. In South Africa, like if your husband dies, like you have to sit there and be quiet basically until, I don't know, God knows when. So can you speak more about silence? That even though there's sound in these videos, but there's this element of silence that is consistent. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if I'm going to answer you very precisely, but like maybe I should start with inserting myself in the work. I don't know if that's okay. Can I start with that? So the first video, Of course, I inserted myself. Yes, that's like a video of myself, and the clothes I'm wearing, it's actually the clothes I wore at my own brother's funeral. You see, and I'm kind of like also working on this idea of that. The idea of mourning is not, it's not unique to me, like I said. And when in the times of mourning, I mourn either individually or collectively with a whole group of people. You know, like you can mourn with people who are your friends, your church, for example, or a bunch of people who come to help you. And I'm seated there silently and saying nothing in my own video, but then I'm sort of allowing people to come into my space, you know? And I'm silent because somehow I'm also not trying to tell the person how to mourn. I'm not trying to direct the way they mourn or the way in which they enter the space, or I'm not trying to be literal and be like, oh, come into the space and read this and say this and do that, you know? I kind of feel like it becomes a little bit more collaborative if the person comes in as the person themselves and they come with their own experience or what they feel, and then it's my experience and their experience collaborating in that space at that particular time. And I see that you kind of like mentioned the idea of silence during funerals. You know, even in Zambia, you do have kind of like funerals where the widow be seated there at the corner, seated there and quiet the whole time. I will admit that I didn't think about that when I was making the work, but that's a good point. I'll use it in my thesis. So you know, I didn't think about that one. So I am going to use that one. But in terms of like the archive silencing, I think that's kind of like what I mean with the shadows, that like I feel like I'm having to go and look through the shadows or look through cracks, or like kind of see what's peeping through the cracks or what has been silenced over time, because I'm acknowledging and saying that there's such a thing as a dominant narrative. In my case, looking at independence, I'm looking and saying that there's one particular dominant narrative that kind of like overshadows everything and silences everything. It's like this story, this is the independent story. And I'm also acknowledging that I'm probably not going to go and change that narrative. I'm not trying to change it. I'm just trying to say that if we listen maybe more carefully, or if we listen a little bit with more intent, we can hear other voices, even in the silence, but sometimes silences can speak loud. Like you just have to pay attention to the silence, or you just have to see against the grain, and then you'll see the invisibility and you'll see beyond the invisibility, is what I think I'm trying to do in my work. Yeah, I don't know if that answers you, Piliswa. I can see she's muted now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She's stunned because that was an amazing answer. I think that was really well put. I want to make sure we get to another question. I hope I'm not saying your name too incorrectly. Chido or Chido?
Chido.
Okay, I'm sorry. You wouldn't believe I'm
Hi,
much
Chido.
more complicated. Would you like to ask the question yourself?
I could, but actually, that what you just said, Gladys, it just felt like it answered everything. I think that was your role. We're just curious about we're an artist, but you feel like a different role besides an artist, because you're making us aware of histories and stories and how stories are claimed, and how you just described it was beautiful. Thank you. I think that was good enough.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you for the question. We are at about our 5 minute. I'm going to invite those that are with us to ask any last questions of Gladys. Personally, Gladys, I could sit here for a lot longer. To me, this is just not, we haven't even skimmed the surface with your work. It's so amazing. I think that there are so many intersections with your work. I think a lot of people have, some people have asked about reactions by different groups of people. I think that what you talk about is very universal, but I think that it's very relevant in so many contexts and a lot within discussions that are happening right now where we are. in terms of how we deal with mourning and how we acknowledge and see what we think is invisible but is not. I think that there are so many discussions that we could have beyond your work. And I just so look forward to hopefully seeing you here in the United States for us to be able to share your work here. But I really am grateful that we've had a chance to at least have 60 minutes to talk with you and see the work that is going to go up again on the 19th, which I'm really excited about. Please share that information with us so that we can share that through our channels and everyone here can spread that word. I knew it would happen. Oh, it was just a thank you to Erica and Gladys for you're welcome. Everybody, thank you. We are we're just so pleased to be able to do this. And as I said, I think for me personally, I have been really taken and so admire Gladys's work. So this has been an amazing experience and treat for me. And I thank all of you for coming and sharing this time with us. And Marian said, good luck with the PhD, Gladys. I don't know how you do both at the same time myself. It is amazing that you have seamlessly intertwined your work. And I think all of us are really looking forward to seeing what you do. And I think that we should all get back together again after this and see what Gladys is doing in the future. So Gladys, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Okay, last call. Thanks, Marian, Hannah. Thank you. I'm good. I love this. This is amazing. So again, we are doing this every other week. For those that came in late, I'm sorry it took a while for us to get those of you admitted. You know, in this world of in the virtual realm, we are now required to have a password. So I apologize for that delay, but it's just so that we can have a conversation and not be interrupted inappropriately. So I really appreciate your patience with that. Again, this has been an amazing interview with Gladys Calichini. We are so grateful here at the Berkshire Cultural Resource Center at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. I invite all of you to join us again. We do this every 2 weeks. We try and focus on our local artists, our regional, national, and international. And we are creating a place, a safe space for dialogue. And it is artists like Gladys that create that opportunity for us. So I thank you for taking advantage of that. And I hope you'll come back and have more of these conversations with us. Follow Gladys, see where she goes. Every support artists like Gladys. This is what makes what we do so important and critical and amazing. So thanks to all of you. Follow us, come back and join us, and stay safe and be well. And thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.
Laura.